With Neal Brown holding his first press conference of 2023 today, it's time to dive in on some of his comments here on the Country Roads webcast. Let's go. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Jordan Cruz back here with the Country Roads webcast. And before we get into this video, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder. If you would, do us a favor, hit that like button, give us a thumbs up on this video. It'll really help its performance, which in turn helps future videos performances here on the channel. And if you're a West Virginia fan and you haven't already, be sure and hit that subscribe button. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's get into it. All right, so as I stated in the opening of the video, Neal Brown held his first press conference of 2023 today, kind of providing an off-season update with some of the transfers that have now been officially enrolled. He was able to talk about some of those, as well as some of the coaching staff changes that have occurred on the West Virginia coaching staff. Of course, as we now know, Chad Scott taking over as offensive coordinator, remaining running backs coach. And then, of course, you also get Blaine Stewart coming on to coach the tight ends and Sean Reagan moving over to quarterbacks coach. And then, of course, Bilal Marshall will be coaching the wide receivers this season. So those are kind of the different staff changes there on the Mountaineer football team, in case you didn't know. But, of course, we've covered those in depth here. If you want to know more about them, just search for our individual videos on each of those coaching changes here on the Country Roads webcast. But having said that, definitely some very interesting comments, I thought, from Neal Brown. Going to dive in on a few things here that really stood out to me. So what I want to kind of try to do with you guys here is I'm going to play some of the more interesting clips from Neal Brown's press conference that stood out to me and kind of give my thoughts on those topics as we continue here through our first edition of what I'm going to be calling presser points. I'm going to try and do this some throughout this season when Neal Brown does hold press conferences, just kind of touching on some of his points that he's made in those press conferences and kind of give my thoughts on them and what it means for West Virginia football moving forward, starting here today with the first one of 2023. So no further ado, let's dive in here with our first clip from Neal Brown's press conference today.
When I look at it, I think the three areas that we have to fix, they're I call them the 3 E's, and it's what I've been talking about with our offensive staff, is we got to eliminate the errors, too many turnovers and too many penalties on the offensive side of the ball, and several of those at critical times, and we've got to be able to clean those up. The second E is efficiency. If you look at our P and 10, which is a football term for your first play in a series, like we've got to be much more efficient there, and then on third and medium. And the third E, so errors, efficiency, and third E is explosives. We regressed in that. We've been kind of steadily building. We regressed in that a year ago, and to me, those are kind of from what we've got to improve at. Those 3 E's.
All right, so as you hear there, Neal Brown kind of talking about the 3 key areas to him that the team needs to improve this offseason. He kind of led with that in his opening statement. As you see, he's kind of coined it the 3 E's, those being eliminate errors, be more efficient, and then, of course, have more explosive plays. And I also think, in turn, when he talks about the defense later, he talks about them giving up too many explosive plays. So I think that kind of goes for both sides of the football, and I certainly think that those are definite areas of improvement West Virginia needs to focus on moving forward throughout this offseason. Certainly the first one, errors, it's something I talked about in the latter portion of this season. If you watched a lot of our game review podcast, was the thing I kept bringing up was, these unforced errors, these mental mistakes, these false starts, most of the time in critical situations, and just really critical penalties in general that have hurt the Mountaineers under Neal Brown's tenure. So I'm glad that he sees that as well. And then he mentioned efficiency as well, and that's one that it seems like he's always harping on, and rightfully so. I think third down defense left a lot to be desired last year, as probably third down offense did as well for the Mountaineers. You got to be more efficient in those situations, red zone, or on those transition downs, whether you're going for it or defending on third or fourth down, or in goal to go situations. West Virginia certainly needs to increase the efficiency there. And then, as I said, explosive plays. We all know they've been few and far between for West Virginia, especially last season. I think Neal Brown mentioned in that clip there that they had improved the prior 2 seasons, but last season they were really hard to come by there. And then on defense, they gave up a ton of explosive plays. They've done a good job of not doing that the prior 2 seasons. Neal Brown will mention that here in a bit, but I think they definitely have to improve there. So I don't know about you guys, but I really like those areas of focus there. I think that could help lead to more success in 2023, potentially, if you can get those corrected. But now identifying and being able to get them corrected are 2 separate things, so hopefully they'll be able to do that as well. So let's take a look at our next clip here. This one more is in regards to the defensive side of the football, although it came in during Neal Brown's opening statement as well. But I was glad to see him mention, that he was not pleased with the results in 2022 and definitely was not pleased with the defensive performance as well, and had some things to say about it here. But despite that, he certainly goes to bat for Jordan Leslie in this press conference, as you'll hear here. But let's hear Neal Brown's thoughts on the defense this past season and what they need to do moving forward in 2023.
Defensively, so not up to our standard. I think if you look at how we played defense over the first 3 years here, I think we established the way that we wanted to play. We had a unique system, and really and gave us a chance. Not in every game, but in a high percentage of our contests, we gave ourselves a chance to win as we kind of got the personnel where it needed to be offensively. And then last year it just wasn't. It wasn't up to our standards. And I think if you look at it, and I've probably watched more defensive film than at any point in my career, just in that from signing date to when it went live recruiting again, is our issues were pass defense, give up way too many explosives. We didn't create takeaways, in our third down defense. In the games we lost wasn't good enough. The games we won, significant difference in third down defense. But pass defense, explosives, lack of takeaways, and then third downs. And so I think when things go wrong, you start really looking and saying, okay, why? Why? And I think the easy thing to do is, a lot of times, and you see this across football landscape, is the easiest thing is, let's just start firing people. Let's just start firing people. And I'm not saying that's the wrong reaction all the time, but I don't think that's the right answer in a lot of cases, because you see a lot of mass firings, and then do they get better or not? And there's a lot of things that go into that. And so when I started really kind of evaluating where we were defensively, I get to this is like we need to win now, right? That's what it is. Like y'all wrote about it. I think that's fair. Like, we need to have a winning season. And so how do we make these improvements within a 9-month period to get to where we need to be in the fall, which is winning football games versus an extremely difficult schedule. And the best way, after going through and really evaluating everything, the best way, in my opinion, is consistency. And so we've got to coach better on the defensive side of the football. I think there's no question about that. We've got to coach better. The portal hurt us last year, and more so than I probably realized. Probably started realizing it once we got into fall camp, but it hurt us. We lost, 4 or 5 starters in the portal, and I'm not making an excuse. It just hurt us more, and we didn't have some things established. Our trust wasn't established during this time last year, and it did. And we got to be better in certain positions, personnel wise, on the defensive side of the ball. But I believe in our group. I believe in Jordan Leslie. I believe in our defensive staff. And here's what came to me. It's like, so in 22, we simply weren't good enough. But you just don't forget how to coach, in a 1-year period. And so, like in pass defense, that's one of our issues in 22. Well, we were first in the league in 20 in pass defense. We were third in 21. Explosive plays, huge issue for us this year. Well, we were first in fewest explosives given up in 20, and we were second in fewest explosives given up in 21. We were top 5 in the Big 12, okay, which is the top half in these categories defensively in 20 and 21. And the reason I'm telling you this, because I think sometimes, like, the easy thing to do is, let's just get rid of people. That's going to solve the problem. Well, to me, it's that's not the issue here. And for us to be better, I think consistency and cohesiveness is more important, and the issues that we've got to fix are more in-house. But we were top 5 in the Big 12 in scoring defense, total defense, pass defense, yards per play, and points per possession in 20 and 21. And so I think the when you start talking about staff change and things like that, it really shifts the blame, where at the end of the day, it's on me. We weren't good enough. But I believe that we have the people in this building that I trust that can get it fixed. And how do I know they can get it fixed? Because we've got it done before. I just went through all the things in 20 and 21 where we gave ourselves a chance to win, and we will do that again in 23.
So there you have it. Some very interesting comments, I guess you could say, in regards to the defense. Like I said, certainly going to bat there for Jordan Leslie, but the standout thing to me that I'm watching this season out of those things that he mentioned, those being the third down defense, takeaways, getting more takeaways and eliminating explosive plays, and then a pass defense. I'm certainly watching the pass defense. I know Neal Brown mentioned they were first in the Big 12 in 2020, third in 2021, but then took a big drop off this past season. But to me, what I'm looking at is, I've mentioned this before, the secondary in 2020 was led by a different coach. We all know that was Jamal Adai. So to me, since 2020, since he left that season, you were ranked number one in the Big 12 in pass defense that season. The two subsequent seasons since him leaving, you've dropped, like you said there, dropped to third in 2021, then took a real drop off this past season. So pass defense is certainly what I'm watching. I want to see if they can get that back up to the area it was in 20 and 21. How about some of the transfers that West Virginia added? Neal Brown certainly had comments on those, but the one that really stood out to me was his comments in regards to Devin Carter, the wide receiver transfer that West Virginia got from NC State. Check this out.
Devin Carter is we lost a lot of production in that receiver room, and a lot of experience, especially with Sam and Bryce going to the next level. And we really felt that we needed to add a one. And we beat a lot of really good people on him. He's got over 40 career starts in his career. And he's been productive. He's had consistency. And what we believe is we can even make him more productive than what he's been. And I think you'll see his numbers, if he stays healthy, be quite a bit higher than what they were at NC State.
So there you hear it. Devin Carter, it sounds like unequivocally, will be West Virginia's kind of go-to wide receiver, the number one receiver. Neal Brown calls him there in the press conference. So that certainly stood out to me there, that comment. I think I was pretty high on Devin Carter, possibly now even more high on him, and hopefully he can really bring some production to that Mountaineer wide receiver room that they're desperately going to need in 2023. And if we're talking about those wide receivers, I think definitely the offense in 2023 is certainly a subject that West Virginia fans want to know about. What's it going to look like with Chad Scott there as the offensive coordinator? Who's going to call the plays, things like that. Neal Brown, of course, was asked a couple questions in regards to those situations. Let's go first here to his thoughts on the offensive changes, how it may look, and what he thinks the offense needs to do to succeed, other than just, being successful in the run game, which I think we all believe they will have a strong run game. So Neal Brown kind of adds to what he thinks they need to do to complement that run game here as he talks about the offense a little bit.
So I think Graham brought us some really some system things in the pass game, as far as how he taught it and the easiness of learning it. I think that was helpful. I think we really found who we are in the run game. And what we've got to do is we've got to build off that. We really expect that to be a strength. If you look at who we return offensive line wise, who we return in the backfield, what we're going to have at tight end, both quarterbacks have the ability to run. And so we really feel like that's going to be a strength. Now what we've got to do is we've got to be able to build off that, and we've got to be able to hit run action passes. That's how you get explosives. Which we've got to be better at. We should be better at that. If you have the ability to run, you should be able to hit some explosive pass plays. We've got to be able to get our tight ends more active, and we got to be able to take some things in the RPO game off being able to run the ball, because if people commit to the box, you got to be able to take some easy completions. So that's what I would tell you as far as differences.
All right, so that's definitely what I'd like to hear for you guys that have been following us here on the Country Roads webcast. You know what I've been talking about this offense in 2023. I knew it was going to lean more run heavy most likely, but I also said that I would like to see it be able to hit some deep play action shots. I've compared it to the 2016 West Virginia offense when you had Skylar Howard running the ball well, Wendell Smallwood leading the Big 12 and rushing nearly 1,500 yards. One of the best years West Virginia's had in the Big 12 that season, of course, as we all know, our only 10-win season in the conference. And I think in that season, your offense was primarily run dominant. However, you really had the ability to hit teams over the top with a speedy guy on the outside in Sheldon Gibson that would hurt teams on those play action deep shots. And you also threw for over 3,500 yards there with Skylar Howard as well. So you were really a threat to hurt in both ways. And I think in an ideal world, that's what West Virginia is hoping they can do in 2023 there. If you're reading the tea leaves there in regards to Neal Brown's comments on the offense that he added today in the press conference there. And then speaking of that offense, of course, the one thing that people are wanting to know is who's going to call the plays. We know Chad Scott's now the offensive coordinator in name. Neal Brown, kind of earlier on in the press conference didn't really talk about it too much, but here in this clip I'm going to play for you guys, it seems to me as if he says it without saying it, that the spring may actually be kind of an audition period for Chad Scott to call some plays. I think it sounds like he's going to get to call plays in the spring, and maybe if they're liking the way that's going, he'll get to do that in the fall as well. So, contrary to popular belief, I think we all kind of believe Neal Brown's going to be calling the plays in 2023, and that may still be the case, but at least, from the outside looking in with what he's telling us, it seems like he may give Chad Scott a chance to call plays, even though it's something that Chad doesn't have experience with. But let's listen on these comments here.
Looking at the play calling process, does that mean no final decision has been made on who's responsible for that, or how that's going to work? You're going to experiment with some things.
So Kevin, to answer your question, so obviously I've done it for a long time. So last year was the first time I've never done it, or I haven't done it since 2008, I guess. And so Chad Reagan has play calling experience, but Chad's going to gain experience in the spring, and that's something that we're going to evaluate post spring of kind of where we're at. And so I'll be able to give you. It's not something I'm trying to avoid. It's really, hey, it's kind of a wait and see. I want to give Chad some opportunities in our spring scrimmages to see how he does, and really he'll be able to tell me as much as I'll be able to tell him, and we'll kind of see it. And at the appropriate time, I'll kind of tell you when we make that decision what it looks like. The way I think about it is, and so to answer your question, Kevin, like I'm not trying to be coy about this. Like I'll be like heavily involved, and I really wasn't that until about the last 3 or 4 games last year.
All right, so there you have it. Very interesting there. Neal Brown basically confirming that in the final 3 or 4 games of the season this past year that he finally got involved into the offense. And to me, that plays into my theory that I've kind of developed here in the offseason. Now, go with me here. The theory that I have is that Shane Lyons, I think, is the one that brought in Graham Harrell and wanted Neal Brown to take on an offensive coordinator. Because let's just look at this from the outside looking in, just kind of reading the tea leaves here. Like I said, purely speculative of me, but I think the moves that have happened recently here in this offseason kind of lead to this. And I think Neal Brown's comments there also just kind of confirmed that for me, because let's take a look back to last offseason around this time. West Virginia brings in Graham Harrell to be offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Now, why would they do that? Because West Virginia was close to success, it seemed like, the first 3 seasons, and they had a good defense. When you're Shane Lyons and you're the athletic director looking at this program, you're thinking all they need is a good offense and this program's going to win. So Shane Lyons, I feel like, went out in the offseason, got Graham Harrell, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, says, Neal Brown, he's going to run your offense, full autonomy. It's his for 2022. Worry about the rest of the team and the defense, and we're going to finally win some games this season. What happens, it ultimately doesn't work out the way that they planned it. Maybe it wasn't the match made in heaven, whatever. But also, what coincides with the final 3 or 4 games of the season that Neal Brown mentioned in that comment that he finally got hands-on in the offense? Well, Shane Lyons was fired just before, 3 or 4 games left of the season. And so to me, if I'm looking at this from the outside, once Shane Lyons is gone, because the experiment that was ultimately his baby, I feel like, had ultimately failed, they decided, all right, we're going to get rid of Shane Lyons. When they get rid of Shane Lyons, now Neal Brown doesn't have, the Shane Lyons mandate of this has to be Graham Harrell's offense. He can get more involved, as he said there in that clip they did in the final 3 or 4 games of the offseason. But also what really led me to thinking about this was the fact, Graham Harrell also, if you look at it, why would he leave for arguably a more lateral position in Purdue? Well, the guy that brought him in, Shane Lyons, wasn't here. He probably doesn't feel as comfortable. Maybe that, him and Neal Brown don't get along that well. I don't know. But I'm just saying that also, I think, plays into that theory of it being a Shane Lyons move to go get Graham Harrell, and also believe the fact that he's going back to Sean Reagan as quarterbacks coach when he could have hired another quarterbacks coach, but instead deciding to hire Blaine Stewart to coach the tight end so that he can move Sean Reagan back to coaching quarterbacks, ultimately just shows that Neal Brown never wanted to go away from Sean Reagan as his quarterbacks coach. And so he's going back, reverting back to his initial plan that I think he never wanted to divert off of, but was potentially forced to divert off of by his then athletic director, Shane Lyons. That's just my opinion. How are you guys feeling in regards to my theory there, as well as Neal Brown's comments here in this press conference that I've shared with you in our first edition of Presser Points here? Like I said, going to try and do this throughout the season for select press conferences as much as possible here on the Country Roads webcast, but we will certainly be bringing you more off-season coverage as we get closer to spring football and look ahead to the 2023 West Virginia football season. And as we do finally get a chance to hear from Neal Brown today, just let us know in general how you're feeling about the West Virginia football offseason and the team's prospects heading into the 2023 football season. Be sure and let us know in the comments your thoughts. We really appreciate the interactions as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.